A very good morning to everybody. And today we have something very new for all of us, which has been hosted by the Maharashtra Association, the president, Mr. Kishore Bhandari, who's here. And it is co-hosted by the Optometry Education Trust, Mr. Rajit Bhardwaj, Mr. Rajesh Wadhwa, and myself. What are we here for today? We all have been going through lockdown experiences and we're all worried when it comes back, would our patients be coming back? What are the precautions that we need to do? And there are times when we are now looking at options. If I need a report, I need to go into a diagnostic. How do I do it? If there is a patient who's sitting at home, how do I manage it? These questions have been there, were there, but they were not as much needed as the time has given us now. We really have to move into a post-COVID time, right, where we will have to think of options where people sitting in remote can actually be assessed, worked up, and all the best of the treatments can be brought into it. So here is what we're going to learn today, the new innovation. All of us are here very much keen to listen to this innovation, and it may be a life changer and time changer for many of us. And for this, we have none other than Professor Algis, who's here with us to join in and bring in this information. May I request Mr. Rajesh Wadhwa to introduce our key speaker today.
Hello, good morning, everyone. It's wonderful and it's really a path-breaking technology we're going to look at. There has always been an issue, where will I keep my Humphrey field analyzer, and my room is not so big, and how will I manage that lighting? And all those issues have been overcome with technology, and we are going to listen to none other than Professor Vingrys, who has a 25-year experience in vision and clinical research. He's a professor of optometry at University of Melbourne. He has, to his credit, 250 research papers, and many of these related to perimetry and vision testing equipment. Professor had served on many national and international committees on glaucoma detection and management, and he is the key person in developing all this and bringing it to the professionals. Welcome, Professor Vingrys.
Thank you very much. Am I on? Good.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Can I simply say, and I'm sure all of you could relate to this, as you can see, I've got white whiskers. So I've been in optometry for quite a long time, but optometry has changed considerably in that period over the last 30 years. When I started, my optometry profession was basically spectacle making, and with a little bit of attention to eye care. It's changed enormously, and it's partly being driven simply by the fact that our profession has to help our colleagues, that is ophthalmology, in managing, detecting disease states, particularly patients with chronic disease. I don't know if many of you have kept up with this, but in the UK, the NHS is not managing very well. And in fact, people are losing sight and some of them are even going blind because in the UK, the system can't cope. And in the UK, there's been a great recognition of the important role they call high street optometry has in this process. In Australia, that recognition has happened some time ago. I'm quite sure it's going to happen in India if it hasn't already happened. So your practices and your mode of interaction with your patients will change. And can I simply say, it's a good change. It's a change that will bring patients through your door. It's a change that will generate income and considerable income as well. And it's a change, if you don't want to take it on, you don't have to. But don't stop your colleagues from doing that, because those colleagues who are advanced and who are looking at this aspect of optometry, I encourage wholeheartedly to go into it and to embrace it. Let me just tell you how this all started. It happened in a similar situation to what many of you probably face in India. My colleague, who is an ophthalmologist, Dr. George Kong, said to me one day, look, I visit a country area and I don't have a perimeter to take with me, and yet I need it. Is there any way we can make a simple perimetry device on a tablet? My answer to him was, no, George, you can't, because no one's done it before. And so we shared a meal and shared a beer. And as I was sitting there, I changed my mind. I thought, well, why can't I? I can look at a movie on the tablet. I can do all sorts of games on the tablet. Why can't I test my vision on the tablet? And so the journey started. This was about 4 years ago. It has now led to what we have here, a sophisticated vision test on a tablet that hopefully optometrists can utilize. One of the benefits of tablets is that they're not expensive. We have tablets in Australia. You can buy the small tablet, reconditioned. They're in very good operating situation, which we do for a matter of $350, $400. Brand new tablets are in the $1,000. But, you know, compared to a perimeter, I'm sure you'll all agree that's a tiny amount of cost. So this is the tablet. Hopefully you can all see it. It's economical, it's fast. Part of the reason when George and I developed this tablet, I wanted to make sure it used all the modern concepts that we understood in terms of perimetry, in terms of patient comfort, in terms of accuracy and reliability. And so we brought all these together into this device. It took us a fair amount of time, may I say, but it's finally got to this situation where it is now. At the time, George and I had to consider, what do we use as the medium for this test? We looked at goggles. Goggles are a very cute, very sophisticated device. Believe it or not, not all people can use goggles. Young children can't. Their heads are too small. Some young ladies can't. Their heads are too small. Many people find them very disorienting to sit in the goggles. So we decided not to use goggles, and in the end we came up with a tablet. And I'm going to hear half of you say, well, what about my Android tablet? Unfortunately, when we developed this product, it was only available on an Apple, because Apple have very good quality screens. And so we picked up the Apple. In the last few years, Samsung and many of the other alternatives have also developed very good products, but we haven't translated our software onto those tablets yet. But hopefully that gives you a background for where we are, and we will move forward, and hopefully India will become a very useful market. Can I simply say to you that just last week, and you'll see it probably in the press shortly, we have signed up a very significant memorandum of understanding with our Optometry Association here in Australia, that their members will access the software, particularly the online software, and I'll talk about that a bit later. And all their members will have access to it and will be able to use it for their clinical practices. Okay, so we want to also give your patients the best experience and outcomes. And Melbourne Rapid Fields, that's what we've called it, because it is a very rapid application. As I said, utilizes most of the modern concepts in perimetry to try and produce an outcome that you can use and trust. Why did we do it? I've given this before. First of all, the conventional field machines they're very expensive. They're expensive in Australia. I don't know if they are in India, but I'd imagine they would be as well. They're not portable. It's not something you can put into your bag or in the back of your car and carry it. Whoop. They can't be used at multiple clinics because they are not transportable. And the data export and analysis is a lot more complicated than what we have done. We've tried to make ours so easy and so readily available to all practitioners. One of the things that we've achieved is that we've cleared the MRF with our TGA, which is the Therapeutics Goods Administration in Australia. It's also been registered with the FDA in America, so it's registered in Australia and America. And just recently, we have also registered it for the Indian CDSCO. I don't know much about that, but I guess our representative there can say so. We have undertaken this work in partnership with the University of Melbourne and with the Arnie Hospital in Melbourne as well. So what have we got? We've got a portable iPad device that acts as a stimulus display. It's been clinically validated against the Humphrey field analyzer. It's been shown to act very, very well in terms comparable to the Humphrey field analyzer. It has standard reliability indices, a progression analysis after you do 5 tests, so you can find out whether people are changing or getting worse or getting better. It uses friendly multilingual voiceovers, so there is a voice that guides your patient and or the optometrist in producing the test. To my knowledge, we now have Hindi available on the iPad, so you can use it as well as English in your practice. There is support in interpretation, so there will be a red, amber, and green color code. I'll show you those a bit later, which identify people who are normal, borderline, or abnormal. And the data is stored on cloud for you to analyze or to be analyzed and for you to get a message if there is a change. Okay, so what does the tablet do? It does a full threshold. It uses a very modern technique called the Bayes predictor. It does a full threshold out to 30 degrees. And given the tablet is a small device, how do you do that? Well, we get the patient to fixate into the 4 corners of the iPad. So you look in the one corner first, in the second corner, third corner, and fourth corner. That'll be demonstrated to you, I believe, by our people in India. This changing fixation allows you to test the visual field up to 30 degrees horizontally and 24 degrees vertically. So that's enough to do the equivalent of a Humphrey 30-2 or 24-2, and we have utilized the 24-2 logic in our test. As a consequence of our developments, we were awarded what's called a hot topic as one of the newest and most innovative research at the annual meeting for the Association of Research and Vision, ARVO, which is the biggest eye and ophthalmology meeting in the world. And that award came in 2016. We're very pleased to have received it. And our company innovation is to produce technology that you can apply to undiagnosed or difficult to manage cases such as those who are not in your practice or possibly in the community. You can actually use the tablet at the bedside of a sick patient. We have now tested over 160 patients in the hospital in Melbourne, and all of them had suspected stroke, and the tablet works incredibly well, even at the bedside of a patient. Okay, this is how the test is performed. The patient is asked to fixate in the center, and they respond either by pressing the keyboard of the tablet or directly on the screen. And spots occur in different positions, and then the fixation moves, spots occur in the periphery, fixation moves again in the periphery, and so on until the test is complete. That obviously is just to show you how the test works. It's obviously a lot faster than it would in real life. The test outcome is shown here on the left. You can see the decibel numbers. Most people who are experienced with interpreting the test will say, okay, these numbers are pretty normal. The Bayes predictor goes up to about 30 dB. It's very hard to get any higher. Notice this took under 3 minutes. The patient, these are the reliability indices, and they were very reliable. In this case, this is a summary of the patient's visual field. They've got a mean defect, pattern defect, and a visual capacity. Those of you who are not familiar with this can look up here and see, okay, it's green. This means it's normal and it's fine to go. Those of you who have got more experience with interpreting visual fields can do that interpretation yourselves. This is a total deviation and the pattern deviation. Here are some exemplar results. A patient without AMD, a central defect, another one with AMD, who has a slight peripheral loss, and then 2 early cases of glaucoma, 1 more advanced. And you can see these have now been flagged red. I don't know what happened here, but there should be a little flag against them. I would imagine they are red as well. The products that we have created have been designed specifically for different conditions. It's rather unfortunate, I believe, that the Humphrey, for example, created one test, the 24-2 test, and applies it to all these conditions. It then leaves the doctor in a position where they can modify the test, for example, use a 10-2 if they want to. However, we've made it a lot easier for you. We're just simply saying, look, if you think there's glaucoma in the family or you're suspecting glaucoma, use this test. If you think there's diabetes, use this test. If you think there's a macular defect, use this test. And if there's a neural defect, let's say your patient has stroke, Parkinson's, or MS, or any other condition, use this test. Now, the test suite comes with acuity testing. Optometrists will be familiar with the high contrast acuity. That's the sort of thing you do every day on a standard chart. However, there are a couple others that have been added, which are very, very useful. One is the low contrast, low luminance test, which detects early cataract and anything that goes troublesome in the eye. And the second one is acuity and noise, which is designed specifically for brain changes, so that it detects things like amblyopia, stroke, and other conditions. Then there are the visual field tests, and there are some specific tests at the bottom. Here is an example of the acuity test, where we present an isolated target with interaction bars. This is a Landolt C, and the patient's task is to pick out which of the 4 options at the bottom matches the break in that C, and obviously it's the one where the finger is at the moment. We've had children down to the age 8 use this, and when you're doing it with a child, you just simply ask them where the wheel is broken, and they can match it quite well. The acuity tests come in different formats. You've got the high contrast, low luminance, low contrast is shown here, and acuity and noise, which is jittered noise around the target. We have published now several papers, as you can see through here, that describe our test and how it works. And we have even had a group of independent researchers, as shown here, a group from the Macquarie University, who have also applied the test and found very good outcomes. If any of you are interested in any of these papers, please let our representative know, and they will forward them to you. I was told that many of you might be interested in diabetes, simply because it's a disease that can affect many of your people in India, and it's a disease that can have catastrophic outcomes both on sight and on the eye itself. It's the most frequent cause of sight loss and blindness in the working age people from the age of 20 to 60 years of age, if you haven't come across it. The interesting thing is the National Urban Diabetes Study, which was conducted in India across 6 major centers in India, found that the Indian population had a prevalence of diabetes of 24%. This is a very, very large number. In fact, it surpasses anything that I've heard of anywhere else in the world. Obviously, the onset of vision loss is related to the duration of the diabetes and poor sugar control. With these numbers, it's my feeling that optometry has no choice but to become involved in both detection and in monitoring these patients. It's usually estimated that it takes about 15 years after developing diabetes for people to start expressing retinal damage. And particularly if you're type 1 diabetic, about 95% of these people will have damage after 15 years. But even the age onset type 2 diabetics, 3/4 will have some form of retinal and vision loss. And now we've got the problem that if you have young people across most of India and they in 15 years can express diabetic eye problems, then it doesn't take much to recognize that people in India suffering from diabetes can become visually handicapped and have significant sight loss at a very relative young age. And really that then argues for everybody, not only ophthalmologists, but optometrists, endocrinologists, everybody, to be involved in trying to detect these people. I'll tell you why you have an advantage. You actually give your patients glasses. People come to you because they have vision problems. You need to be looking for these diabetics because you've got so many in your population. You need to be considering, do you have diabetes or not? And it's not a hard thing to do. You will have the potential to have a profound impact on both the quality of life of your patients and the productivity of these people as they get to middle-aged time. Now, diabetes, as you probably will recognize, damages the small blood vessels of the body, and diabetic eye disease occurs when the small blood vessels leak fluid. So you end up having one of 2 major problems. The first is that you can affect peripheral locations because leaky blood vessels will mean that the oxygen and the nutrient doesn't get to those parts of the eye. And to find these things, you really need to do a visual field test. The second type of problem is that the fluid can leak into the macula and cause edema or swelling at the back of the eye. And that can affect sight and produce sight loss if not treated early. And so this really needs to be treated. You will not be treating these, or at least we don't treat them in Australia yet, and probably in India you won't be neither. But I would put to you that you would do a great service to pick it up in your patients and to send them off for the appropriate medical management. Visual fields, this is a group of diabetic patients. This is the normal range in the gray up here. These are patients who have AMD. It's another form of retinopathy. And you can see that in the central part, this is eccentricity down here. In the central part, the macular region, both the diabetic group and the AMD patients suffer quite considerable loss. The interesting thing is that the AMD patients become normal as you get further and further out in the eye, whereas the diabetic patients stay depressed across the entire eye. The other interesting observation about the involvement of vision is that vision loss can quite often predict development of serious retinopathy by about 1.5 years. And if you come across a diabetic patient who's looking like this, what it simply says is that that patient should be monitored more closely than they may have been in the past, so that they can get prompt medical intervention when their retina starts to suffer. Another test, apart from the visual field, that's useful in diabetics is the low contrast acuity test. Low contrast has been shown to be affected in many eye diseases, but in diabetes particularly, it's affected quite profoundly. And here's some data from a group that had controls, this white bar. They had diabetic patients who had no retinopathy, and you can see that they are abnormal compared to the controls. And they had diabetic patients with retinopathy, and you can see that they are even more significantly abnormal. In fact, the visual acuity, this is visual acuity here, of the normal group is around here about 20/40, and this is in the imperial of about 20/100, which is a significant loss of visual acuity. I'm sure you'd all agree with that. Now, the other thing about this low contrast acuity chart, it can detect developing cataract. And many of you may or may not know that cataract is one of the complications of diabetes that can happen, particularly with age, in diabetic patients. So the apps that are available from the MRF are visual field test. It takes about 3 minutes. A macular test, if you want the macular version as well, and the acuity test, low luminance, low contrast, and high contrast acuity. Here is an interesting case of a 54-year-old patient who had presented because they felt their vision had a smudge in front of the right eye. We did a visual field test and a low luminance acuity test, and you'll find that the eye doctor, actually it was Dr. Kong, did OCT scans subsequently and showed that this patient had edema and swelling of their eye. And when they were treated, their vision came back to considerably. I'll show you that in a minute. Ooh, I'm not sure where that went. It is missing. So let me just reiterate that to you. At this point, they had an acuity of close to 648, 636, and they improved to an acuity of about 612, 6.9 when they actually got treated. Okay, so you have sophisticated vision testing to detect early cases of vision loss, cases that aren't just refractive. You might be saying, well, I don't see too many of those. You know what? I didn't neither when I used to just refract. If you don't go looking for a tiger, you're never going to find one. And you've got to go looking in the right places. So, you know, if you really want to start getting into this, you got to start producing that level of optometry. So yes, you need to detect the early cases, and they are there, and they will start coming through the door when you start offering that service. The second is you can predict people who are likely to develop severe and debilitating sight loss. These are the people that need to be referred as quickly as possible to their ophthalmologist or to their doctor or endocrinologist or whoever. You can monitor people so that you can have early detection of change, and early detection will lead to early treatment. And the earlier the treatment happens, particularly in many of these retinal conditions and or glaucoma, the better the outcome will be. This then gives a targeted approach for people with diabetes and who are at risk of progression, producing better outcomes for the patients, targeted medicine for the individual, and it reduces clinical loads because you are involved in the patient care. Let me tell you what I found. Not only am I involved in the patient care, but I also provide good spectacle refraction and a new pair of glasses. And I find that the patients appreciate that as an optometrist, and they come back more often. And you know what? Next time they come back, they bring their children, and they bring their grandmother and their grandfather. The next thing you know is you've got the whole family being looked after within your practice. So it is quite a practice builder to get involved in these types of vision care. You can use the, I apologize, the MRF app for regular monitoring, or you can use it for screening. Some of you might say, look, I really don't have the capacity to provide these full tests and monitor the patients. Well, it'd be good for you to actually screen patients so that you identify those people who need further care, and you can send them off to someone who can provide that if your choice is not to do that. And it'll basically make you appear like a quality and advanced eye clinic using world-leading technology. What will that do? It'll say something to your community. Your community will say, I have an eye problem. Where am I going to go? I'm going to go to that person who knows what they're doing and who actually knows how to test my eyes and my vision. But we have a new problem. We have a new problem, and it's happening in Australia, particularly in COVID-19. And that is, we have lockdown here in Australia. I presume you have likewise in India. I now find it very difficult to see patients, and patients have to go through a long list of answering questions, whether they've been overseas or they are coughing or spluttering or something else. And it's because of COVID-19 that George and I have developed an online version of the MRF offerings. And our group there in India will be able to discuss these with you and discuss how you can utilize them. So you don't need a tablet anymore. You can offer to have your patient tested at home when they're using their own PC. What we found is that many patients don't have PCs. So we say, look, what about your children? Some are elderly. What about your children? What about your grandchildren? Do they have some form of laptop or Android device? And they will have one. Otherwise, we ask them to use friends or relatives, and they can test their vision away from your practice, and they can send the results to you. And you can then either look at them and say, yes, you have a problem, we need to see you tomorrow, or no, you're not that problematic. Here's an interesting example. A 78-year-old gentleman was suffering severe frontal headaches. These headaches had started a few months ago. Guess what? They had blurry vision. Guess where they went? They went to their optometrist. Their vision was not up to scratch. They actually walked in, they took their glasses off, and they threw them on the table and said, these are useless. Give me something that works. I'm sure many of you have seen patients like this. Their acuity was normal. Their acuity was normal. Here it is up here. Logmar minus 0.1, logmar minus 0.1. Their acuity was normal. But patients that have headaches and blurry vision and keep complaining, it's a good thing to do a visual field on. And look, 2.5 minutes, and this is what we found. Many of you, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out there's something wrong with this person. And in fact, they had a compression on the pituitary, a chiasmic compression that was treated pretty quickly, and the person changed enormously. They were very grateful to their optometrist for finding this in such a short period of time. Here's another case, a 32-year-old patient with glaucoma. This was tested online. You can see this is a young person. This was them again a few years before. It took about 4 minutes here and about 4 minutes here on the Humphrey. This is the new Humphrey CETA Faster. It's the fastest possible test the Humphrey can do. And you can see the correspondence of the defect. Here it is here. It's sort of around in a circle, and likewise here. And if you're not convinced that this is abnormal, there's a red mark here that tells you this is abnormal. You should consider probably testing or sending this patient away for a second opinion with a specialist. We've so far, using the online test, Dr. George Kong, my partner, has compared 20 people who are identified here against the Humphrey. You can see the Humphrey mean defect on the y-axis and the MRF online on the x-axis, and the correlation is extraordinarily good. In fact, it's better than what we had expected. And the level of unreliability, look, online, let's face it, they're going to be done at home in their comfort of their own home. There's two possibilities that can happen here. One is the reliability could be better, or the reliability could be a little worse because they get distracted by their children or their wife or their husband or somebody walks in, and that distraction, I would have thought, would lead to a much worse performance than in the clinic when you've got a clinical attendant there present. Strangely enough, it's not that bad. It's not that bad at all. So, and I think it's partly driven, this reliability is enhanced simply because the test only takes 3 to 4 minutes. So people can do it quickly, and they're quite comfortable in doing it. So most optometry practices, they're closed probably due to lockdown, just as we are here. It's my prediction that there's going to be a slow process to return to normal, but people are still going to need their eyes tested. There are those people who've got a disease at the moment, and they need to avoid blindness. If we don't test them, there's only one eventuality, and that is these people lose sight. So you can offer significant benefits to your patients. You can also make a small amount of money from it. And you can do this all by working at home. There's no capital investment because you just have to use your PC, and you have to order the visual field test or the vision test. You can screen diabetic patients. You can screen patients who have got neural problems. You can screen patients who have got glaucoma. And then you can refer those patients on to your ophthalmologists as is needed. And you can provide ongoing monitoring of patients who have got chronic eye diseases, such as glaucoma. I hope all of you rise to this occasion. Optometry, no, your community, India, needs you to be making sure that the sight of these older people, and some of them are not that old if they're diabetic, is preserved. And they need to have a good quality of life into their future. I can see Bobby has just come back on board. I think I've finished, Bobby. Is that right?
Yes, Professor. So yes, Professor, and thank you for that. I think the structure of the program is the questions at the end. So what we'll do is we'll take because it's being streamed. Can we get to our the online demos just to get a flavor of how simple and how easy it is to go, and we'll go through the results of one patient as just for the benefit of everybody, and then I think there's questions after that.
Okay, that's a good idea, Bobby. I'm going to have to change this screen, so if you can just bear with me for a minute. Here it is here. This is the website that your representatives there will give you. So you get onto this website. That is the detail up there, visiondata.net, and you simply sign in to the portal at the bottom here near the eye. Okay, so I press that. You have to be registered for this to happen first. So again, you will have to work with your representatives in India to get registration. So this is now my clinic, or my name with my password. I sign in and I get to my patient files. So I'm now the practitioner. So here are my patients, and you can sort of see them there. I have a test patient that I use. I use a couple of tests. If I haven't got a patient, I can add a patient to this file. I just simply press this and I give them an ID, a name, a year of birth. They're the important things. And I can allocate the number of tests that I want them to do on telehealth on their PC. Okay, so I won't do that. I'll go back to the patient list. But let's just go to the test. So this is my patient. Let's say this is a patient, and I open it. This will identify the patient here. I can change aspects of it by simply editing. And this is, I'll identify the tests I have got the patient to do. So in this case, I've allocated visual acuity and a 24-2 visual field. They're the standard tests that come up for most applications. However, if I edit that, you'll see down the bottom here, I can use the low luminance, low contrast test, or I can use a macular test instead of the standard visual field. But usually when you order some tests, it'll be these two. And there's the patient's name, there's a date of birth. So I'll just go back to where I was, if I can do that. Yes, I can. Okay, so once I've ordered the test, I'm sorry. Once I've ordered, let me reset that. Once I've ordered the test, I create, those of you who are comfortable with computers, this is a URL, which is an address where the test lives. Okay, I simply copy that and I send an email to my patient. I don't have to, I can write them a letter. I can put a note to them. But you no longer are seeing this. So let me stop sharing. Let me share this again. I apologize, this takes a couple of steps. So here I am now. Okay, you can see my email. I'm now on my email and I'm going to send it to test patient. And what I'm sending them is the address where their test lives. This is called a URL. So here it is. I've just copied and pasted. And the patient simply has to put that address into their browser. Okay, so I'm now going to stop sharing this. And I send it to the patient, obviously. But I'm going to stop sharing this. And I'm just going to go back to the browser. I'm sorry it takes a couple of minutes for me to do this. And I'm going to start sharing this with you again. I think that's, no. 1 minute. There we go. It's the white one. There we go. Okay, so I've gone back to my browser and I'm the patient now. I have the address that I got from my optometrist, which I've lost and I can't remember where it is. But if I typed in the address up here, it would take me straight to my test. Unfortunately, I've forgotten what it is, but I'd get back to this site. So now the patient gets to this site and they simply press start test and there are the tests. Okay, the first thing that has to happen is that everybody's PC TV screen will differ. So you have to calibrate your test.
Professor, the calibration screen hasn't come on our end.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I need to share it. Thank you, Bobby. Keep reminding me. I kind of get excited when I talk about this and I forget. Can you see it now, Bobby?
That's right. All good.
Okay, excellent. I'll just make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so there's the calibration test. We were perplexed how to do this. This was not easy. In the end, I'll show you what happened. We have used your standard
Calibration
credit
is
card.
important to ensure the test is displayed on the screen correctly. Click the plus or minus toggle buttons to adjust the width of the white outline to just fit the short side of a standard bank card or credit card. Click the done button when finished.
Okay, so there is a voiceover. I'm not sure if that is in Hindi yet, Bobby, but there's a voiceover that tells the patient what to do. So you take out your credit card from your purse or wallet, you put it here, and you make sure that it matches the size of these white lines. If it doesn't, you can make it bigger. Can you see the lines getting bigger there? or you can make it smaller. Okay, and I know mine is 264. That, so I'll go yes, done. And once I've calibrated it, I can then do my acuity test. So I'll go on the left eye.
This is a test of your visual acuity. Please wear your spectacles for near vision if you need them. Close or cover the eye not being tested. Press one of the 4 shapes on the bottom of the screen that matches the one in the center of the screen. If you are unsure, press the question mark on the bottom left-hand side of the screen.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure it's this one.
Good.
Oh, I got it. I'm pretty sure it's this one.
Good.
And now I can't see that.
Try again.
Oh, I'll try again.
Try again.
Oh, I'll try again. Oh, that's it. That's the end of it. I didn't see it. So then I've got a result here. And now you can see I'm 638. I was pretty hopeless, wasn't I? I need to see an optometrist and get some new glasses. And then I've got a visual field if necessary, and so on. So let me just show you how the visual field works. I won't finish it, but we'll hear the voice
Hello,
again.
welcome to MRF Visual Field Application. We will now test your left eye. Please close or cover your right eye. Please ensure your face is 50 centimeters or 20 inches in front of the screen. The first test is a practice test. Press the screen every time you see a gray dot appear. Press the screen to start.
Can you see the gray dots? And I'm pressing the button. That noise means I'm pressing the button. Okay, I won't belabor you with that, bore you with that test, but that's how the test goes on. And it keeps on going on for about 3 minutes or 4 minutes until it finishes the test. And that is the end of that test session. Okay, when the test is done, Bobby, tell me if you can't see this.
So Professor, are you showing the results of a completed test? I think that would be useful for everybody.
When the patient has completed the test and saved the result, I'm just looking at what happens. The optometrist gets a message. And I'm looking for one, I can't find it. Isn't that awful? Oh, here it is.
So Professor, we can't see your screen now.
I know, I haven't. You're very impatient, young man.
Oh, sorry.
Here we go. Hopefully.
Yes.
That shared. Can you see something here now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. These are my emails, and you can see here. Can you see this one here? Mail admin vision data. Okay, that came yesterday. If I click on it, your patient 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 has completed the test. And you can review the test result here. Okay, so if I click on that, oh, now you can't see it. I will share it.
It's the other screen.
There we go, share. I'm back to this site. I sign in. I sign in again. And then my patient's number was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there it is there. And I look for them. And there it is. This is my patient. So I click on it and I have a look at their test results. And there they are, green and green. This person is perfectly normal. This was a 20-year-old person. It took them about 3 minutes to do these tests. They had 648 acuity, both eyes. They were perfectly okay. And that's the online result and how it all works. I'm quite positive that our representatives there will show you and demonstrate these aspects of the test. Now, Bobby, the thing I found is I found it hard to remember how to do all this stuff. There are some videos on the website. There's a video that says signing in, a video getting a new patient, a video looking at your data. So go through it. There are kind of YouTube videos if you want to use them, and hopefully they will help you get used to the process. But as I said, I'm a bit older and I've got white whiskers and I can do it. I learned pretty quickly. My grandchildren could learn this in no time, but I learned pretty quickly and I can still do it as well.
So the approach we are going to follow in India, Professor, is as we have practitioners, so optometrists, ophthalmologists coming on or beginning to use the apps, we will actually be having a personalized one-on-one training session. Although the offering will be done online, but we will be having a personalized one-on-one training to be able to assist them to get going and use and support. So that's the plan for India.
Fantastic. Fantastic. How do you want to, I don't know if there are any questions now, Bobby. Do we have any questions?
Ollie, I'm going to hand over to Ollie over here.
I have a question, if you permit, please.
Sure.
Please.
Yeah. The main question is the normative data used for this particular test is of what ethnicity? Because my experience was whenever I used the other parameters, I had to put Indian age by an extra 2 years to get the right results, which I perceived were better than 2 years lesser age.
You're asking about the
Fields.
age database. Is that what your question is?
Say 24-2 has been done.
Yeah.
The ethnicity,
you
Professor, the ethnicity and the ethnicity of the normative data.
That's a good question. We started with an Australian population. Australia is reasonably multicultural. So there are quite a few Indian people in our database already. There are a lot of Asian people in our database, and there are a lot of Europeans and Caucasians in our database. We have since confirmed, we have had, if you have a look at one of those papers that I referred to, you'll find that there was a paper that was conducted, the study was conducted in the UK, in Cambridge, and in Delhi, India. And we have since confirmed that the Indian database is quite accurate and consistent with our information that we've used. But if you people in using this test find that it doesn't actually work in terms of the data analysis, we would definitely alter the database. I mean, it's in our interest to make sure that it reflects every group of people that use the test accurately if we can. And I'm reasonably comfortable. To give you an example, Bobby, who was that doctor we worked with in Delhi?
So Dr. Harsh Kumar from the Center of Sight.
Correct, yes. And then we worked with a Dr. Vinny Gupta, and he used the test with children down to the age of 8. And our databases were very accurate, even with the children and with Harsh Kumar's, Dr. Kumar's glaucoma patients who are a lot older. So we're reasonably comfortable that things will be spot on. But yeah, we don't know. We can't. It's up to you people. You start using it and let us know, and we will alter it as we need to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Algis, I have a question for you. I understand there are 4 different applications. One is for diabetic retinopathy, one is for glaucoma, one is for macula, and other is for neural. So do you mean that we have to download each of them separately, or it's only one app that has 4 divisions whereby we can test only on one application?
No, there are 2 options for you. One is an iPad, and that has four apps on it. The other is online, and that simply has 24-2 and Acuity. So on the online version, you don't get the 4 apps. And the reason we've done that is because COVID only happened in Australia about a month ago, and we had to develop something quickly. So we went for the simplest thing, which was 24-2 and Acuity. I think you'll all agree that that's probably adequate for everything. However, if you get the iPad, you will probably find your distributor will provide you with the 4 apps at the time when you purchase the iPad. Is that right, Bobby? Can you confirm that? Yes.
That's right, yeah.
Yes. So then you as the optometrist can decide which one of those you will use in your application. And each one's a little bit different. If I'm not sure, I'll always go back to 24-2. It's just the easiest thing. You know, that's what they'd get in an eye hospital. So, you know, I'll do what the ophthalmologist will do.
Okay, I have another question that you have mentioned that we can measure the visual acuity, we can measure the field, and we can measure the contrast sensitivity.
Correct.
This visual acuity can be measured for distance also, or it's only for near?
No, you measure it at 33 centimeters, but it has a very strong correlation to distance visual acuity. There's a recent paper that came out from China. The Chinese are very interested in this as well, and they developed an acuity test on an iPhone, and it was a Landol D, and the people did it at 33 centimeters, and the question became, is that reliable? And I think you'll find this paper was just published not long ago, and they said has very strong correlation with distance acuity. I'm sure there's going to be some differences. You as optometrists will know that, but it's not going to be profound. You know, people that have a large acuity loss will have expressed at near and at distance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, normally when we do our automated perimetry, we always do it in a dark room. Does the size of the pupil and the illumination make a big defect on that? Or is it something where it is universal? Or do you do any adjustments on that?
That's a really good question. In short, I'll say no. And no, it doesn't make any difference. But there is one thing that is very critical. The test has been designed so that pupil size and brightness, surrounding brightness, will not impact on the outcome. And you can look at a paper that we have published back in 2016, where we had a very, very bright environment and a very, very dim environment, and the outcomes were the same. And we had pupils that were constricted by pharmacological drugs to very, very small, and those are dilated very large. And again, the outcomes were the same. So that doesn't really matter, but I'm sure you will appreciate, and you may have seen, that if you have a reflection on your screen, if you're not sure what I'm saying, get your mobile and stick it under a light and look at the reflection, and it's catastrophic. That'll completely ruin any testing. So the only thing that I'm saying about environmental light is I tell the optometrist to put the screen in a position to sit where the patient's going to sit and have a look and make sure there is no reflections off the screen, and then they can do the test. Now, I would think that if you're going to get a patient to do the testing at home, I usually ring up the patient. I usually make an appointment for them. Let's say 1 o'clock today or tomorrow, we're going to do the test. I'll ring up the patient. I'll say, make sure there's no reflections on your screen, or the alternative is to turn off the lights and do the test in that way. And then I'll work the patient through the actual start of the test and make sure they're doing it properly. Now, you don't have to do it yourself. You can get one of your assistants to do it. It doesn't really, but if you want to do it yourself, that's fine. I'll do it myself. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Great, sir. I think it was a wonderful presentation. It's time to take question answer, start question answer session. So there are a couple of important questions. So first one is from multiple people raised. how to monitor the fixation parameter or the reliability indices like a false positive and false negatives?
I'm not quite sure I heard that. It broke up a little bit, but you asked a question about false positive, false negatives?
Yes, three component. One is fixation pattern, false positives and false negatives. How to monitor that?
Okay, the false positives and false negatives are polled during the test, just like it does with a Humphrey. But the actual way of looking at false positives is a bit different. They have trials. The Humphrey now has a different way of looking at false positives to other perimeters. And the actual patient data, are you talking about the age-related patient data or not?
No, Professor, what he's asking, I mean, how do you engage? I mean, how do you get this? There's a fixation loss because our software does not have that camera.
The
so
blind,
it does not
the
have
blind
the
spot.
eye gazing.
Like fixation.
The blind spot.
Yeah,
yeah,
fixation loss.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Prakash. You were breaking up and I had trouble hearing it. The fixation is monitored by the blind spot monitor, and you will get a report of fixation. Actually, I had a copy of that somewhere. If you can just bear with me for a minute. I don't know what I did with it. I think it was in the presentation we did. But anyway, it's the same. Without measuring eye movements, fixation is monitored by finding where the blind spot is and then presenting spots into that area, and the patient shouldn't be responding to them because they are in the blind spot. Or actually, I think I've got it. No, I haven't. Yes, I have. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to share the screen again for that question. Can you see this, Bobby?
Yes, yes, Professor.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay. For that gentleman who asked, over here, the false positives and false negatives and the fixation loss. Okay, so this person had no fixation loss, made no false positives and no false negatives. Okay, if you have a look over here on the Humphrey, they were also reliable on the Humphrey, except the false negative was off. So that information is provided over here on the left-hand side. And I think any good perimeter should have that test in there. You raise a very important point.
Thank you. But the question was that how to monitor that is if somebody from the company, if you can explain that participants wish to know how you monitor, like Humphrey sends the stimulus at different point and check it.
How do you monitor what? The false, you can
normally,
see
normally
Fixation loss.
fixation, because normally what happens when we do the Humphrey test, when we do it, when the patient fixates, we find that the patient is not fixating or the readings are wrong. We again tell him to fixate. So we monitor that normally the fixation losses and all. We tell the patient to see again at the central spot. Here, can we have a system where we can monitor that, or we can tell the patient that something is wrong, looking at that fixation losses and false positive and false negative?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure if I understand your logic. Let me just get that back up again. I'll share it again.
Okay, Professor, do you want me to answer it?
Yeah, Prakash, you can jump in.
Okay. Here is the Humphrey result. Okay, the Humphrey gives me fixation loss, none, false positive, 4%, false negative, it wasn't tested. Here is our result, no fixation loss, exactly the same as the Humphrey. False positives, none. This was 4%, very low. False negatives, none, and it wasn't tested. So that's how I monitor it. I look at the result that comes up on the printout. Am I answering the question? I'm not quite sure.
Okay, Professor, actually, what Kishorji has asked. Okay, so Kishorji, I'll try to answer this question. So when we begin the test, so what we do is we look for the blind spot first. So now the person will do the normal test, or will, I mean, whenever there's a light, he'll press it, and then response will be, I mean, registered, right? So initially we look for the blind spot. Once we have detected the blind spot, then the actual test happens. And while the test is happening, we do send a light on the blind spot in between the test. So if the person is fixating his eye movement, then he'll be able to spot the light in the blind spot. So that's how we detect if there's a fixation loss.
Okay, great. I think that answers the question. Coming to the next one, how do you control the stimulus intensity?
Right. That's just done by controlling by software. You don't control it, the computer controls it. And it's run by the Bayes logic. So the Bayes logic is very similar to a technique that the Humphrey uses. It's called SITA, S-I-T-A, and our Bayes logic is very similar to that, but it's actually a little bit better, and that's why it's much faster than the SITA logic. And the computer controls the brightness of the screen.
Thank you, sir. Continue to this question. Now, when you are doing online test across the device, the contrast and the intensity of the light changes. So how do you control that? When it is app-based, probably you can control by the program, but online, how to monitor that?
We do exactly the same. The program has been written to control your PC at home. There are two provisos. The first is you have to calibrate the TV, which we took you through that step, and that calibrates the pixels, the number of pixels you have on your screen. Okay, and the second thing that is necessary is that you must turn your screen up to full brightness. Okay, that's something that you'll have on your TV screen, and you'll have to adjust it to full brightness. If you don't adjust it to full brightness, it won't work. And you'll get an error message saying that we can't do the test. So you have to set your screen to full brightness. And once you set the screen to full brightness, our software controls the rest of the test and it sets the brightnesses relative to that full brightness. I can't tell you anymore because my partner would kill me. It would give away trade secrets. So I'm afraid I have to be careful in what I say. Look, it was a challenging thing to do, but what I really would like you to do is to try it. I'm sure if you tried it, I think you'd find it works, and then you'd be happy.
Ollie, just to come in here on that, it is these aspects of controlling. So in addition to using the Bayesian thresholding and the luminosity control, which was then of course used on clinical trials here in Australia, that resulted in first the Australian registration and then the FDA. So this information has been submitted there as Professor mentioned. So it has been robustly tested and cleared and approved. So yeah. So I think it eventually comes down to the fact of usage. And one more point, I'd go back to what Vadwaji had mentioned earlier. Just to let you know, Professor Vinay Gupta from AIMS has been using the MRF apps for over 2 years now in AIMS, in his clinics. And in fact, in November, he organized a conference. This was for pediatric glaucoma, which is his particular interest. And there he presented all the data that was used gathered from AIMS. So it has been used at AIMS, and he has published internationally also in terms of the efficacy and the correlation with HFA and the fact that it works very well, especially in children and seniors and olders.
Great, sir. Couple of more questions. Now, Humphrey usually on lighted illuminated background, but this test is showing on reverse polarity. Is there any functionality changes because of that? And are there any standard measurement, head posture or sitting posture or visual angle is there for this test? Particularly, we have to observe.
Are there any, I missed the last part. Are there any what?
Head posture and the distance.
Yes.
Anything specific in terms of the posture and the distance to ensure that the test accuracy is maintained?
Yes, the test has to be done at a specific distance. It'll either be when you do your calibration on your PC at home, the computer will calculate whether you do a test 50 centimeters, whether you have a modern TV screen with a lot of pixels, and you can do the test at 50 centimeters. I find that a comfortable test distance, or you do it at 30 centimeters or 33 centimeters if you've got a older screen with less pixels. But there was another question that I think we asked at the start. Would you mind repeating that?
Yes, so this test was done on reverse polarity. So background is black, whereas in Humphrey, usually it's the illuminated background. So will that make any significant change in the patient stimulus or response?
Okay, I got you. The background is not black. I actually saw that too on the slide. The background looks very black. I agree with you, but the background's not black. The background is 5 candles per meter squared. The Humphrey background is 10. So there's a slight difference in background, but that slight difference is so small, it really won't make any difference to the test outcome.
Sorry.
Can I simply draw your attention? I just want to do one thing, if you don't mind.
Sure.
For this young gentleman here, and for Belby. I can hear Belby is a doubting Thomas. let me find, where is my data? Here it is here. And I'll share this screen with you. Here we go. I'm sorry it took a while to get it because I'd put it away after the talk. You're asking very good questions. And, you know, there's another way to look at this. There's another way to look at this whole thing. Here we go. I'm about to share this with you.
So this is very early from the participants. I'm just
yeah.
Ollie, you should take credit. You can take the credit. We don't know that.
This is very early data. Can you see the Excel spreadsheet I have here?
Yes, Professor, we can.
Albeit, yeah.
Yes, we can.
Look, this is the Humphrey result. This is the online result. If the online test was so bad, you wouldn't get this correlation.
Yeah,
that's another way to look at your questions. You know, if we're actually doing something sensible, we get a very strong correlation. If we don't do something sensible, the dots are all over the place. And here is you know, a normal person on the Humphrey and a normal person on the online. Here's a person with a very marked defect on the Humphrey and red and very marked defect online. And here is a person kind of intermediate, amber and intermediate. You can see the losses here, borderline, it says borderline on the Humphrey, borderline on the online. You know, the proof is in eating the pudding. The pudding is the same as the Humphrey. And so while I accept your questions, because people have to ask them, and it's sort of, it's almost difficult to think that a tablet can do this testing. But in fact, I take you back to something I started and I said very early. And that is, if I watch a movie If I do something on a tablet, it's very realistic. So there's no reason why the tablet doesn't work well. My TV does the same thing. So all you have to do is you have to be clever enough as an engineer to be able to control it. And you can get very, very good outcomes. And that's what I'm fortunate. I'm the scientist. I give George Kong the ideas, and George Kong is the programmer, and he writes them, and he does a really good job. So I hope that's just another way of looking at your questions.
Just Ollie, just to add on to that, at the recent All India Ophthalmology Society conference in Gurgaon, Dr. Harsh Kumar, who's the head of glaucoma at Center of Sight, he had a program. He was running a breakout, and his topic was which perimeters, and he basically compared all the perimeters. And what he did was, before he even much before the conference, he actually in his own practice, he ran 40 tests on his patients who were doing the HFA, the Humphrey test, as a routine, and he separately asked his assistant to do the test, do the iPad-based test, I must say, on each of those. And he presented a session in the Ophthalmology Society saying he was very confident because as Bhadwaji asked the question about normative data, he said all this is fine. Does it really work in the Indian context? So he did his own tests, got his own report, got his own data, and he had presented over there. So that's one aspect I just thought I'll bring up here. Second, the positioning in India is more from a screening point of view. What we're saying is let's use the MRF apps as a screening tool, as the first line of defense, especially because you see all the patients coming to you with refractive errors. So we're saying let's start using it as a screening tool, and then the ophthalmologist can continue using their normal protocols. In Australia, just to let you know, as you know, the healthcare is provided by the government. The MRF and the HFA are equivalent tests. A professional cannot do both the tests to get the benefit, to get the payment from Medicare. So they can do either or. However, in India, we're saying, please use this as a screening test, identify the problems, and then the ophthalmologist can choose in terms of carrying on with normal protocol.
That was great. I think we'll take the last question. Now, choosing the test program, which one to choose? Either for pre-diagnosed some condition, or suppose I don't know what is the pre-diagnosed condition is. Or there are cases when there is a combination of two, like diabetic retinopathy as well as glaucoma. So which program needs to be chosen while we're doing the test?
The screening program is actually a standalone program. It doesn't come in glaucoma, diabetes, macular versions. It only comes as one version. It has been designed to be very efficient in the sense that it screens critical areas in the visual field. And so it's very fast. It can be completed in about 60 seconds to about 90 seconds. It's a very fast test. If the person passes the critical areas, it stops. But if the person doesn't pass those critical areas, it expands the test and gives you more information on that person. So it can take about 2 minutes on a person who has a defect, but on a normal person, it can be finished in 65 seconds very, very quickly. So the screening program is that. It's a screening test. It's not there to specifically target diabetes or AMD or anything else. If you know your patient has got a specific disease, you're better off not screening. You're better off going with the specific test made for that purpose. But otherwise, screening is perfect for an optometry practice because you, ladies and gentlemen, will see a lot of people who are otherwise normal. Most of your patients, I would hazard a guess, would be normal. So screening is a very good tool there to make sure you're not missing early abnormality.
Just on that, just to add one last point on that. So the Chandigarh Medical College and Hospital, what they are doing is they are going to be conducting in the periphery of their catchment area of the area they service. They're going to be doing as a pilot 1,000 screening tests. People who are identified with the red or amber on the screening test will then do the full test. And if again there's a red or an amber, they would then be sort of scheduled to be examined in more detail at the hospital itself. That's just an example of what they're doing in terms of screening.
That's great. Now I think we have done with the question and answer session. I would like to invite Optom Kishore Bhandari sir to interact with the presenter and announce few of the components. And then we'll invite Optom Ajit Bharadwaj sir to summarize today's program. Kishore sir, please.
Today, this is the best occasion for me because today being first of May, being a Maharashtra day for us. Basically, it's a big day for us, for all Maharashtrians. For all Maharashtrians, basically, this was the day on 1st May 1960, the Maharashtra state was established. So on this occasion, I thought, President of the Maharashtra Association, I thought probably this was the best way of getting education to all the optometrists all over India as well as Maharashtra. Plus, as the association is getting formed and the registration process is underway, we thought post-COVID, we wanted all the students to know something about optometry in Melbourne, where students would like to know about research and this thing. If sir would inform us of anything, where students would like to come there for research and PhD, and probably also understand that in Melbourne, there's a course called Doctor of Optometry, which students can also enter. So sir, can you elaborate on certain things on that?
Professor, just if you could provide a short update on the various programs run at the University of Melbourne, including the doctorate of optometry and other programs, just for the information of people who are on the live streaming.
And also on research.
Okay.
and research opportunities.
This gentleman looks too old to come and do a doctor of optometry.
No, I'm not. This is for my young optometrist. I'm too young now.
Look, we had just to give you some background, 5 years ago, our university changed from undergraduate training to postgraduate training. So optometry had to go from a bachelor course to an OD, a doctor of optometry. We based our course very closely to that's currently in medicine and in dentistry. And so those three courses are now very similar. They're all 4 years duration. In our course, we have 3 years. The first year is basic vision neuroscience and optics. We do a lot of optics in the first year. In the second year, it starts on clinical concepts, and the students, and the third year, we finish off on diseases, management of diseases, therapeutic management of patients, etc., etc. The fourth year, just like medicine, is entirely in the clinic. There's not a single lecture, it's entirely in the clinic. And the students are seeing patients and they're specializing in different aspects of optometry. We have 7 areas of optometry, one being general optometry, pediatrics, binocular vision, and neuro, anterior eye, contact lens, glaucoma, and posterior eye, and low vision. So that must be 7. The students have to see a certain number of patients in each of those categories to pass, and they don't have exams in the fourth year. They simply produce a portfolio of cases that they've seen and they've managed, and they produce evidence that they are can manage them. And that evidence comes from clinicians like yourselves who assess our students throughout the year. That's the OD, or the Doctor of Optometry course. The university also offers specialist certificates. Those certificates are offered to optometrists who have graduated, like yourselves, who want to specialize in one aspect of optometry. And I think the specialist certificates are offered in retina, glaucoma, contact lens, dry eye, pediatrics. They're common, low vision, probably many of the specialist areas. So we have clinicians, and all those specialist certificates are done online. They're not done by flying to Melbourne and doing the course there. You gentlemen can, and ladies and gentlemen, can do this course in India if you wanted to, but it's hard work. All the optometrists that do it say to us, that was really hard, but I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, basically it's going back to school, and you're expected to do the work, and every week you have assignments, you have other requirements to meet. When you finish that, you get a specialist certificate that you can put up in your practice, and your patients can see it, and they can say, oh, you are now an expert in contact lenses or something. If you do 4 of those specialist certificates, you end up with a master's. And each specialist certificate takes at least 6 months. So you can do a master's in clinical optometry by doing 4 6-month lots of specialist certificates in whatever area you decide. I can't remember what the costs are, but they're not that cheap. These are all set by a university. I think they're around the $5,000 mark, but don't hold me to that. You can have a look at the university website. How many rupees is that? That sounds like a lot of rupees, Bobby. What is $5,000?
250,000, 2.5.
Is that a lot? I think that's a lot, yeah. Anyway, we have, in this current course at the moment, we've got 20 students. 3 of them are from Hong Kong, 4 are from Vietnam, 3 are from Singapore. I don't think there's anyone from India, but we've had people from India and Pakistan do the course. Obviously, there is a required standard to get in. A lot of people have done optometry and who are trained a long time ago and have not kept up to date with education, find it very challenging, and in fact, they can't do it. Many of them pull out rather than waste their money. But we're expecting students, the people that come into this, to have a reasonable understanding of modern optometry, and so yeah, and it will. It's a good way of learning. So they are the courses that we have. We have postgraduate specialist certificates, and we have the postgraduate OD optometry program.
Professor, there was another part to the question in terms of research, research opportunities. I think that could be a very interesting area, given the large number of potential patients and data that can be gathered. What is your view on doing research?
You're talking about in Melbourne University itself?
In conjunction, or how could one do research with faculties from the faculty members from the University of Melbourne? How could that work?
Yes, there are several models. One is obviously go to Melbourne and do the research, do a PhD or a master's in Melbourne itself. I guess that's the expensive one, because you have to fly into Australia, you have to be there for a couple of years and do the research there. One of the problems with that model is that Melbourne University now charges international students, and it's not cheap. I think it's about $27,000 a year for an international student. Now, international students can get scholarships, But to do that, they have to score very well in India or wherever they've done their undergraduate training, because all these scholarships are competitive, and we have 1,000 international students all applying for 70 or 80 scholarships, but they can get scholarships to support themselves. The second way to do research is to do it locally here in India with a university or with an academic group here in India, and to have a co-supervision by a Melbourne based academic, so like myself or somebody else. And that can happen and does happen. And usually that is established by the academics talking to each other, not by the student. It's usually driven by the academics. So I'll give you an example. I'm hoping to be supervising a student in AIMS with Dr. Vinny Gupta over the next few years on a project on using our perimeter for young children who have got neurological problems, which they have quite a few there. So that's how you can do the research. I guess if you wanted to do just clinical research, there's nothing to stop you from doing that. And if you're very interested, for example, to do some research in this perimetry sphere, I would have some discussions with our representatives over there and see what could be arranged. Research.
I think, Professor, that was one of that's possibly an area of interest to do joint research and leading to publications in international journals. So is that something that you would be interested, or how could we take the joint research based on clinical data, clinical data from India, from the practices? So let's say Mr. Kishore sees 300 diabetic patients, and they do the tests on the apps, and let's say they also do the Humphrey, to be able to convert some of that into a research paper. Is that how could or would that work in terms of joint research opportunities?
Look, the planning of it's possible, and it's only highly possible. It's probably encouraged. I mean, that's how we did the study in Delhi with Dr. Vinny Gupta. It started from a discussion, just like we're having now. But to do any research, it has to be planned well. It's like building a house. If you don't get the foundations right, it's going to fall down. And your research is the same. That has to be planned well. It has to be. You have to be rather a nitpicker when you do the work. You have to do things exactly as you started off on patient 1 and on patient 100. And you have to do it every single thing exactly the same. Otherwise, your research will be meaningless and it won't be published. And so you find quite often clinicians find that difficult to do. But if they're prepared to follow a fixed formula and keep doing it time and time again, there's no reason why we can't do research in India. And I'd be very happy to discuss this and help groups plan it, and also analyze it and publish it. It would be very good for optometry to get involved. I mean, we do that a lot in Australia.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
So that was, of course, a continuation of my question here. We're looking at that. Now, as you said, you want to bring in this device is actually first step, the screening device. And optometrist is the primary care for the screening. Dr. Vinay Gupta and All India Institute has a separate kind of protocol, which is exhaustive. He's probably following that. So let us look at a joint partnership on seeing that this working as a screening tool and few optometry practices. We also have ophthalmologist co-management with us. We have the glaucoma specialist, both Dr. Anybody. So you should do multi-centric, picking up a few optometrist senior practices across various centers and just see how it works as a screening tool, because this is where the opportunity is, and this is where we see the beginning of this tool in India, because there are established tertiary centers who have their perimeters with them. So they are continuing to be with it. It is the optometry crowd and the co-management where it will actually make the beginning. So if you have already a protocol on it, which is the screening protocol, a few optometry centers with good qualified people who can handle it can be taken in. For ourselves as an university institution also, we love to be part of this, and we have a campus clinic. We'd love to bring in this. So if you can bring in those thoughts, it'll be very good.
Monica, you asked what I think I understood from what you're asking is there a role for doing a clinical trial evaluating the screening capacity test?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. A little bit more complex than that. We've just recently finished one in Australia where in Australia we had 2 hospitals that service our rural and remote people who live in very, very distant parts of the country. And the way they serviced them was with a bus. They'd go out once a month with a bus, stop in the village, spend 2 or 3 days there. All the people would come in and get screened. Now, the way they addressed that question was they had a Humphrey and they had our test. And every person did both tests.
But you see, you've already established. So let me, sorry, interrupting. So you've already established that Humphrey and this are comparable.
Yes,
so we're not going into the fact of comparable. We're also saying that as a screening tool, how many positives that I can bring out, how many suspects can I identify? So if this tool in a rapid screening method gives me these at least good sensitivity and specificity, then of course we validate that as a good screening tool where every optometrist can be involved in co-management and referral.
Right, but the only way you work out specificity is if you do both tests. Because if a patient passes the MRF, how do you know they haven't got a problem? You don't know until you do the other test, and then the other test says, oh no, that patient's okay. So then what you do is you do both tests. So this is the Humphrey is now your gold standard, and you compare the MRF screening to the Humphrey. In the study we did here in Australia, the screening outcome was very good. Screening outcome is very good.
So that's where we said when we identify, we pick up this patient and refer to the tertiary center who has an Humphrey parameter. They repeat it, and the conclusion to come out is how many false positives or how many false negative kind of screenings have actually suspects could be really picked up by the optometrist by doing this tool.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. And this is the in fact first step that the Chandigarh Medical College and hospital, this is the first step they're doing. So absolutely, you're right. So they're doing a pilot on 1,000 screenings. That is a number they chose, and to do in the area surrounding Chandigarh, which obviously they service. So if you could also look at a similar number, is
Sure.
that, I think that would really validate and help identify.
If I've heard Monica correctly, Bobby, I'm a bit concerned. I think what you were saying, tell me if I'm wrong, please, Monica, is I think you were saying we do the screening on the MRF, and then those that are found to be abnormal get referred to the ophthalmologist who then does the Humphrey.
Yes.
Right? Well, you can't do a study like that. No, because the MRF might miss people, and you don't know that. So all you're doing is you're testing people that you already know have got a problem, and you're going to get very good screening result. But that's not how you do the study. You have to do every person on both tests. If you do every person on both tests, then you can say how many are false positive, how many are false negatives, because you're using the Humphrey as the gold standard.
So, Professor, there are two aspects here. Professor, one is around the research aspect, one is around the practical application. So, if Monica ji is talking about practical application, then she's accepting that the MRF results are fine. So, from a practical application, it would be, let's do screening. Let's only bring in the people who have a problem. But I hear your point. If you want to do a study, you got to do both for publication. So there were two aspects in there.
So that study has already been done in AIIMS and PGI Chandigarh. So they're already doing to validate. They're validating the tool. That's fine. So what I'm bringing in it, if this tool is with the optometrist, it's the perspective. So it's not a hardcore research study. It is bringing out the market survey study. Market survey saying these are the optometrists who used it, and at least they could pick out 10 glaucoma suspects in a month, or the numbers. So it is validating the practical market survey of this study.
Absolutely. So Monica ji, we will get in touch with you. So Prakash and I will be in touch with you as to how we could take it ahead on that basis.
Monica, you know what your study would do? It would convince your colleagues, the other optometrists, that, it's worth doing, and it would convince government, and it would convince health ministers. That, optometry actually is in a position to detect eye disease. I applaud that. That's very good. Very good.
So that's where even as a professional, I can establish that yes, optometrists with this tool can pick up fair amount of glaucoma suspects. We may lose out some, we may not, but at least we have at least picked up this much population from blindness. We prevented the blindness by detection early.
Absolutely.
That's where we want to say.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Great. I think that was wonderful discussion. Now I would like to invite Ajit Bharadwaj sir to summarize today's talk. I think we went way behind the time, but it was a productive discussion.
It was worth it. It was worth it.
Thank you, Professor Algis, and thank you, Maharashtra Optometry Association. And this sets a very good example of how state associations can play a crucial role in enhancing the skills and knowledge of optometry. You know, optometry is in forefront, and there are a lot of expectations of ophthalmologists and Ministry of Health and public. And post-COVID-19, it is going to change, because you have to establish your profession as a primary eye care profession to provide a cost-effective, reliable, and accessible eye care. And we have to learn to embrace these new technologies. But we talk about the visual field. If you add a non-contact tonometer to your clinic, and if you do the screening and refer for glaucoma, refer for diabetic retinopathy, and refer for neurological disorders, you will become a reliable partner. And the government is looking at us, the public is looking at us. What we need is to adopt these technologies which are cost effective, and that is what we are looking at. Appreciate what Maharashtra is doing. I would encourage all other state associations to take a similar role. We will be glad to provide our services, our assistance in any manner we can collaborate with other state associations too. Coming back, what we have been doing in past, we did the program on telemedicine. Then again, we did a program with, we did a program for diabetic retinopathy with Dr. Natarajan and Center for Sight. And now we are doing the same telemedicine for evaluation of glaucoma. And we will continue that. Tomorrow we are joined with Dr. Bhatti, and we will learn how to take good photographs to become a reliable telemedicine, partner with ophthalmologists. And on Sunday, we will come out with a new perspective, how we use this technology in a sustainable and reliable and innovative way for the practice of optometry. So on Sunday, we are talking about how we bring all this into a practice, because we are talking the clinical parts. We are just talking picking one by one, picking one retina first, glaucoma first, and picturing first. Now we'll be coming on Sunday. We will talk about innovative way an optometrist can practice post-COVID-19, post this telemedicine relaxation by the government, and Please stay connected with us, and we'll continue with our effort in bringing out the best on political, educational, and what you saw today, collaboration in research from academic to academic institution. And we'll appreciate that all of you continue to join with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
everybody.
Algis. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vingrys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
A good day. Stay.
So Prakash's details have been circulated, and Prakash is based in Delhi NCR, but both Professor and I are also available. Kishorji has our details, so please feel free to connect with us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ajit, can I just, Ajit, was it? Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just pass on our experience here in Australia? About 10 years ago, our profession went into therapeutic management of patients. We found two sources of resistance, and I guess you can guess who the first one was, and that was conventional medicine, and particularly ophthalmology, because they felt threatened by it. Actually, some ophthalmologists who are smart enough realized it's the best thing for the community, and they supported optometry, but there are a lot who felt threatened. The second source surprised me. It was my own colleagues. There's some optometrists who somehow feel scared or threatened by the change in their own profession. And my own colleagues were some of my worst enemies. I can't believe it. I applaud what you people are doing. I think your group is going to advance the profession, but not for the profession's sake, it's for the community's sake. The community wants you, the community needs it. They don't want to be going blind, and they need you people to help them. But watch out for your own colleagues. But the thing that we learned is our colleagues don't have to do it. If our colleagues don't want to do it, they can just be as they were years ago. And the younger people come through and they see this future, which is different to what it used to be. And they are the ones that will drive the profession. I find now that 25, 28-year-olds ask me questions that I never asked when I was a student. Never. You know, the future of optometry is very, very bright. Thank you very much for asking me to talk to you. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Professor. You know, you have given us a word of wisdom, and I will actually endorse what you said. We are in the same situation what you were 10 years back. We had a seminar yesterday about taking the profession forward, and we felt the similar challenges coming from our own colleague on this issue.
Yes,
they are in such a comfort zone sitting and doing refractions that they are finding themselves in a difficult situation how to change for diagnostic and therapeutic rights, because we are struggling with that, but at the same time we are committed that we have to overcome that, and that's the way only optometry can participate, being a good support to ophthalmology as well as to the public, because without those rights you cannot participate in an effective manner. And I'm sure ophthalmologists understand it, and our optometry colleague understand that point, and take all these lessons what we learned from you all and take the profession forward. And that's what we are working at. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all, and thank
you.
you for arranging it. I've much enjoyed it.
Bye.
Thank you, Oli. Thank you, Kishorji.
Yeah.
Good day.
Good day. Good
Take
day.
care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you, Bharadwaj ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.